Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 20 of the Hammer and Nail Show. I can't believe it's been 20. We're on our 20th episode already. I'm Jack Hammer, and here's my co-host over here, Jessie Naylor. How you doing tonight, Jessie?
I'm doing good, man. It's the big 2-0. That's weird doing that opposite, by the way. Big 2-0. And every time that intro, it gets me fired up. So I'm ready to rock, man.
No, I love that intro. You did a great job putting that thing together. That thing definitely gets you ready, get you fired up, and get you pumped up for a game day right there. That's for sure. A lot of stuff going on this week. We got the big game coming up on Sunday, the final preseason showdown. But
Yeah.
Uh, there's been a lot of talk between the two of us on Twitter in the last couple of weeks with regarding one of the 49er players. And when I sent out the tweet earlier today about the show and to come on and check it out, I almost put on there, make sure you check this one out because it might be the last one, because I don't know if one of us might not make it out alive. No, that's kidding. But definitely some fun topics tonight, and
Yeah.
I think the one that everybody Trey Lance is on top of everybody's mind for sure. And so let's go ahead and we'll just kick it off with Trey Lance. And how would you grade Trey Lance through two preseason games, and even maybe more than that? Like, how would you grade him in comparison to Jimmy Garoppolo? Do you grade them on the same scale, or how do you go about doing that? Those kind of things. Might be another way to
Yeah.
take this
Yeah. I
question.
mean, okay. So as far as like the scale, I think the only fair thing to do is to grade them on the same scale. But it's hard for me to like not think about two things as I'm doing this. Is Jimmy's a veteran, an 8-year veteran. So when he makes these mistakes, it's like you're never going to correct these. This is like who you are. So it's, even though I'm grading him on the same scale, it's like I know just forecasting, Jimmy's not going to change who he is. But when Trey makes these mistakes, like, okay, well, you're a rookie, you should make these mistakes. I do expect that you correct them, and over time, you will be able to correct them. And then the other thing that's in the back of my mind is, well, Trey hasn't even really gotten mobile yet. So when he gets mobile, how does that open things up? But when you just strictly look at it from a pocket perspective, I'd probably give Trey Lance a C at this point. And I think that's probably right where he should be as a rookie. We're talking about a kid who hasn't he hasn't played a meaningful game in almost 2 years at this point, right? Because even that 2020 game was more of a showcase game. Everything was done late. There was COVID protocols. He wasn't even really able to practice with the team. There was just a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that game was more of an exhibition. And then he's been in two preseason games, which have been great, but he hasn't played them end to end. And again, they don't ultimately mean anything. They don't count as a win or a loss. So it's been a long time since he's played in a meaningful game. And so with those things being said, I expect there to be some rusty play. I expect there to be some shock with the game speed, which we've certainly seen. Um, there's still some mechanical things that show up, and we got to talk to Coach McAvoy again last week, and you know we've seen some of those mechanical things that he's talked about. They still show up from time to time. Are they better? Yes. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. So, all in, he certainly showed some flashes. And I think from what we've seen as a pure pocket passer, which he's basically been for the two showings we've seen, I'd give him a C. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, and I'll start off the part about when you grade him against Garoppolo and that kind of thing. As I would say, uh, I understand that Lance is a rookie, but you're expecting him. If you're expecting him to be a starter, he's got to be. You've got to grade him the same way that you're going to grade Garoppolo. I understand it might not be fair because he's a rookie, but that's okay. And so when you look at him, and when I'm saying grading, I'm talking about how he's playing on the field, like certain plays, right? When we look at a play and we say that this is a bad play by Lance, if you look at that same play with Garoppolo, if you're going to say it's a bad play with Garoppolo, it's a bad play with Lance. That's what I mean by that. Um, and that's one of the things I know you and I talked about kind of a little bit. I think on Twitter right after the first game, because I was a little, I was hard on him because I didn't think he played very well against the Chiefs. Really, I know he would have been 10 of 16, I think, for whatever, right? If you included the drops but the sacks I felt like were a couple of those sacks were on him. I thought he missed a couple of throws that he should have made, just things like that. Um, so for myself, and that's the way that I'm going to look at him throughout the season, is that when I'm looking at his film, when I finally get a chance to get his all 22 on a regular basis, and I'm breaking it down, I'm going to look at it the same way that I would Garoppolo, regardless, right? Or any quarterback for that matter, whether it was Garoppolo or Mullins or Beathard, right?
Yeah.
So you look at him that way, and then my grade for Trey Lance so far, I grade him out. I gave him a B minus is where I put him. I put him out as a B minus. I had him as a B minus in week one. When I went back and looked at the film, I probably should have put him more of a C, you know, because I graded him off of what I saw live in the
Right.
game.
Right.
If I went back and watched when I went back and watched his all 22, I would have probably given him a C if I graded him a couple of days later. In this game, I gave him a B minus again, but this one was a solid B minus effort, definitely above average, but not quite good enough to be a B. There was definitely improvements from week one to week two, and that's really what that was fine with me. I'm fine with saying that he's bad because that shows that gives him room to improve, right? And
Yeah.
and I thought he played much better in week two against the Chargers. He was, he struggled a little bit early, but I like the fact that the way that he rebounded and came back after his worst play of the game was the one when he got sacked after he scrambled out to his left. That was, I felt like, his worst play of the game because he should have just kept running. I don't know if he would have made it to the sticks because there was a linebacker there, but with his athleticism and things, I would have liked his chances better doing that than what he did. But once he got sacked there, the game turned for him, and he just started playing. It seemed like, and things. We saw what he did. He lit it up. And we saw the same thing yesterday in practice too. He threw an overthrow across the middle for an interception, and he came back and after that part of practice, he played really well. So I give him a B minus. That's where I look at it.
What okay, so I'm going to ask you two questions. I'm trying to remember them. So the first one I'll ask you is, okay, I know we haven't seen a lot of Jimmy, but you've seen more of him, and maybe you'll kind of put what you've seen in practice as a part of your grade just because it's been so little. But what would you grade Jimmy then?
I think they're pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
I put Garoppolo at about a B minus B, maybe slightly ahead of him, but
Hmm.
not really. And one of the biggest knocks on Lance that you've heard from some of the other writers, I think, um, is that Lance has struggled in some of these situational periods. I don't really agree with that though, because at least the practices I've been at, they've been fairly similar. Whereas, if Garoppolo drives him down on a move the ball period, Lance does the same thing. They've basically put up the same result. So I can't. It's hard for me to say that one's above the other. I think they're really playing very similar, uh, and that's partly why I've said, for me, if these guys are as close as they are, I don't have a problem with going with Lance because he's going to. You expect him to improve. You hope he
For
has.
sure.
You expect him to improve because potential is a tricky thing here,
It
right?
is. It is.
Uh, so that's. I mean, the last 2 days for myself, I thought Garoppolo played really well yesterday. I thought today he, outperformed Trey Lance really, even though he had an interception.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's tough because I'm not there. Listening to the way that Grant describes it, it sounds like he could have thrown four picks. So I don't.
Well, yeah. If we go back through his day, he started off slow, right?
Mhm.
He had a throw in the flat that he had been looking downfield. He went to check it down, and it was a late ball, and Aziz Al-Shir knocked it away. Might have been able to pick it off. It was a close one. Um, and then there was another. There was two of them. That one, and then there was one. He had a receiver coming across the middle, and it looked like Talanoa Hufanga could have broke it up or picked it off, either one, and he didn't do either.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand what happened there. It didn't make sense that he didn't even try to knock the ball down. I
Yeah.
don't know if what was going on that one, but uh, what I saw today was with Garoppolo, and the reason I say I felt like he played a little better is because he was pushing the ball down. He was the quarterback that was pushing the ball down the field for a change. Usually that's been Trey Lance. Today, Trey Lance threw one ball that I can remember. He completed one ball, I should say, on throws beyond 10 yards. Pretty much
Yeah.
everything that he completed was check down Jimmy Garoppolo kind of
Right.
performance, right? Um, and they, he ran the ball pretty well and stuff like that too. But uh, that from a passing perspective, I thought Garoppolo had a nice deep ball that he hit. He had to Trey Sermon. He had another one that he underthrew a little bit to Debo Samuel, but Samuel had both hands on the ball and should have
Hmm.
should have brought it. And it wasn't even like he had to go up and make a spectacular catch. It was one of those kind of balls and it just went
Yeah.
through his arms.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the interception that he threw was a bad ball. That was I
Yeah.
think I don't if he just didn't put that one out far enough in front of
Yeah.
Debo, because if he puts it out in front of him, I think Samuel keeps running away. And I think it would slow him down just enough to where Mosley was able to use his speed to make up the ground and step in front of him.
Yeah, so here's one thing that I'm starting to pull from practice and game, this limited game film that we have is, so Trey right now is averaging double the yards per attempt of what Jimmy is as far as the game goes. It's around like 8.6 to 4.3 or something close to that. And there's been about 3 practices from what I gather. Again, I haven't been there, so I'm relying on you, Aponte, the spreadsheet, Grant, whatever. And it sounds like there's 3 practices where Trey was really given those opportunities where he just dumped it off a ton. And when he did, I mean, he was around 80% accuracy, right? So that tells me it's like, okay, well, hold on a second. So if Trey is given a game plan where he's got a ton of Jimmy gimmies, he can complete 70% or 80%. Maybe when he gets to the game, that's 65, 67%. Okay, well, that's close to what Jimmy does. And then I get the added value of him being able to run and also be able to take legit shots outside the numbers. It's a no-brainer, right? Like, why not play the kid? And so I guess that's kind of my thought on that. But a question that I had for you, and Grant and I got into this a little bit yesterday, and somebody in the chat, was killing me for it. Oh, you've never watched film on Trey, which is probably the funniest thing I've heard. I've got every single all 22 game and I've watched them multiple times. But at any rate, when I watch his film and Grant said, well, listen, Justin Fields is doing a good job of escaping from the pocket and, taking off, and Trey needs to do that. And the way that I've always looked at Trey is if the middle opens up, he's going to take off on you. But when a defensive end closes in on his pocket, I didn't see a lot of times on film, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, where he's got a ton of elusiveness and he's going to break the pocket and beat a linebacker to the edge and take off downfield. Like, I didn't see that a lot in his game. I think his game is more if a defensive end crashes and gets a hold of him, he can shrug off an arm tackle and either bust up the middle, or he can stand tall in the pocket, move up, and fire downfield. But I didn't see a lot of escapability from being crashed down on the outside and getting around that or getting through that the way that you see with a Wilson or a Murray and you've seen from Fields. I mean, did you see a lot of that on film?
No, and that's one of the no, I haven't. That's why you had that's, go back to our you and me going back and forth on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
That leads back to whatever our discussion on Sunday night about that play that I mentioned where he starts moving and then he doesn't run, and you have Twitter blowing up saying that he's not scrambling uh, because Kyle Shanahan's telling him that he can't run, and that's not the case. I think that's a situation of people not watching enough or no understanding enough of who Trey Lance is, because Trey Lance is an extremely athletic player that has great mobility and speed, but he doesn't rely on that, and he chooses not to rely on that. He's exactly what you said. He's a guy who pretty much is going to step up into the pocket. He'll move around, but even when he runs, it's always late. At least at North Dakota State, it
Mm-hmm.
was right.
Mm-hmm.
He'd move, and it was just taking too much time, which worked fine for him at North Dakota State. But in the NFL, everything's happening a little bit quicker. So when he starts to step out, he needs to make the decision: am I going or am I throwing? He needs to make that decision quicker. And it seemed like on Saturday night when he did that one where he scrambled out to the left and whatever, when he came to the sideline, it seemed like he got a little bit of a chewing out from the coach, from Scangarello there
Mm-hmm.
on the sideline, because the next time he got into that situation, he was out and he ran for
Yeah.
the, I think it was a 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
And then I think it was in the second half. He scrambles for a first down on a play where he's just much more decisive. So I think that's the biggest. I think you're right in the way that he plays the game. Is he's going to look to throw. He's not a guy that's going to hit his back foot and take off very often. Where you see him start to sprint out, like you're saying, is when he's really struggling with his eyes. Because I didn't see him do that a lot in college, but I did see
Mhm.
him do that like in the national championship game, his last game of 2019, and it seemed like in that game he was really struggling to see things, uh, and it got to a point where the coaches had started just running him to kind of get him out of the struggles in the throwing game. And then when they started to go back to the pass, he was having a hard time, so he was using his legs a little bit more there. But doesn't not something he does a lot.
Well, and they also didn't. I mean, they didn't do a lot of cram in the middle of the field with routes the way that San Francisco tends to with their playbook, or has with Jimmy, and
Mm-hmm.
have done so a little bit with Trey. And that's where it seems to me like he gets in trouble. Like if he has to just break down one side of the field, he's been perfectly fine. He's been decisive. He's been quick, and he's made his reads and gotten through it. But once it comes to the middle and you've got linebackers sitting there and you've got slant routes and digs, and it seems like he's really late on processing that. And again, you didn't even see that a lot in college. In fact, most of his errant throws were right down the middle because he either saw it late or he didn't take anything off of it. Like this, what he's showing is who he was. Now it's obviously at a higher level. I think his mechanics have improved, quite a bit, really. But he still shows those flashes where it's like, hey, this is a work in progress, and I'm cool with that. I think if when he decides when Shanahan decides to play him and make him the full time starter, they've got to move that launch point, make it easy for him, give him those high low reads. And it's basically like you've got two reads. You got high low high, and you can take off and run. And you've got momentum to take off and run because you're already on the move versus sitting in the pocket. All right, you've got to sneak out right, you've got to sneak out left and make defenders miss. I just don't, we didn't see him do it a lot. And I also question if that's even really in his game or in his skill set. He's a bigger guy. When he gets speed, you're not going to catch him, right? But when he's in the it takes him a little bit to get up to speed. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see that Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray elusive type game in the pocket. I don't think that's who he is.
No, I don't. I don't. I think you're right. He doesn't have, and same with Justin Fields from he doesn't have the quick twitch, I guess is the best way to put
Mm-hmm.
it, because and he's a little bit like Kaepernick in that way.
Yep.
Kaepernick wasn't a quick twitch guy either, but when he got his momentum going, he was faster than heck, and
Right.
that's how Lance is. And I agree with you. When you watch North Dakota State, they ran a lot of stuff on the outside. They ran a lot. They ran a lot of variations of flood patterns. Is really what they
Mm-hmm.
were doing. And the 49ers do that too, where they run the over routes where they got a deep and then they got the guy coming from the opposite side, or they do it in different ways to get into basically what a flood is. And you've seen him do a little bit of that, and he does well. I think his biggest issue, it's not necessarily that he's throwing over the middle, but what's happening, the balls that he's thrown over the middle where they've been high and tipped in the games. So you look at the one against the James in the Chiefs game, and then the interception to Sanu, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on both of those balls, he gets to his back foot and he's ready to throw the ball now. And you can see him, you know,
Open up.
open up like he's he wants to throw it, but then he's got to put his hands back together. And that opening up, putting his hands back together, and then finally going to throw it, it's throwing the timing off. So it's almost like he's ready to throw it. The receiver hasn't quite gotten to where he's supposed to get to yet for that ball to
Yep.
be able to be thrown. And so then it throws it off, and then he overthrows it, meaning he's out of whack with his mechanics. And when I mean overthrow, I'm not saying, obviously the ball's going over, but then he's trying to fire it in there too hard,
Yep.
right? And like the ball to James, that one was too far out in front of him, and he alligator armed it a little bit, and so he didn't touch it, so the ball just goes through. The one the Sanu was a little bit out, out in front. Should he have caught it? Yeah, he should have caught it, but I mean, they're only 12 yards apart, and the ball's coming out so darn
Yeah.
fast. It makes it a way harder catch than it needs to be. But he did a really good job, though. You're talking about he did a better job when it was a deeper middle route, right,
Yes.
for the touchdown,
Yep.
because that one was in rhythm. There was no hitch in his throw to that
Right.
one. He hit his back foot. He had looked off the linebacker to get him out of the to open up the hole, and he threw the ball. It was all in rhythm. And when Lance throws in rhythm, he throws a really nice ball. When his ball gets out of whack, it's because he's not throwing in rhythm uh, for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, I just think of everything. I mean, he had, so in the first game, I'm just trying to remember, he had the tight end over the middle. I think it was Warner where he missed badly.
Hmm.
And then he had the one to James, which at first a lot of people thought he alligator armed it, which he did, but I still don't know if he makes the catch. And then
Probably not.
I think of the next game where he missed the dig route that you're talking about, the one where he ran left and he ended up, taking the sack. He missed that dig. I mean, that was wide open. If
Let's
he
talk about
sees
that
it,
one real quick.
yeah, go ahead.
So on that play, I think the reason he misses the dig is because he's getting pressure from his right side.
Right side, yeah.
So he has to slide to the left, and so that's a. I don't think he missed it as much as he's sliding because he has to slide over. The route gets is he's late now because he's having to move. He's having to move at the time when the ball should be coming out.
Right.
So that would have been a tough ball for him to throw because even when he moves, he's still got guys right there. So for him to be able to go through his motion, which is down here and then out here, it's still really congested. So I'm fine with him escaping on that one.
Yeah.
I just want him to keep running because
Yeah,
he's
for
got enough
sure.
speed. He has enough speed that I think he could get to the sticks because if you watch the play, there's a receiver that's out there and there's a guy that's going to have to undercut that. I think that Lance can either beat him to that or he's going to be able to cut back inside of him and use his up, that way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I also
And,
think you talk about the Saxon game one again, check downs over the middle. So it seems to me it's like that in between the numbers is where he's got some growing to do, right? Whether it's, throwing high, throwing late, missing reads. That's where I see a majority of the issues, which is interesting because that's where Jimmy's so good, right? Is
mhm.
short and in between the numbers. And Lance seems to struggle there, but he's good everywhere else, right? And so it's just an
Yeah.
interesting contrast of styles. But the bottom line is they both have work to do.
Mhm.
Just play Trey Lance, gosh darn it. Like, God.
well, the thing about Lance, when you look at him in week one, he's missing the sacks. I think because the first sack is because he's locked in on the tight end, and I don't think he realized that he's got a blitz, and I don't think he never looks to the hot route until it's too late because he's locked in. The the miss to the tight end that you're talking about, if that's Garoppolo, it's a first down and it's a big gain because
Yeah.
Garoppolo's going to hit the running back in the flat who's got the pick play on the right side,
Yep.
and and that was the problem there because he gets into his and he's locked in on the tight end on that one. That's where he's going to go from the time the ball snapped. He feels for whatever reason like he's got to get the ball past the sticks there, so he's locked
Yep.
in on him. At least this is me reading his mind and kind of
Mm-hmm.
thinking about him. Haven't watched him enough. I think he's no thinking he wants to get this ball past the sticks, so he's got to hold on to it long enough for him to break. But what happens is Banks gets beat, and now he's got a guard sitting in his lap. So when he goes to throw it, now he's got to get really high because he's got this big old guy standing right on his
Yeah.
toes, and that's why the ball sails out there. If he just gets the ball and just takes the easy throw, piece of cake,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And yeah, so those are the ones that I can think of. Uh,
I know Keneal had a super chat for you.
no, he does. He does. I was going to get to, it, but we're talking about
Yeah,
Trey,
yeah.
and
No, you're good. You're good. I just don't want you to miss it.
no, I got it. I know he was
Okay.
talking about. We can jump to it real quick.
Yeah.
He asks, Jack, I know you've been at practice. Does the difference in the amount of picks, 11 for Jimmy and 4 for Trey in camp concern you? And the answer, yes and no. I mean, yeah, there's definitely 11 interceptions isn't a good thing at all. Uh, there was only one that I can remember that I wasn't upset. I mean, it was a bad ball, whatever. When you look at the situation, the ball had to be thrown into the end zone. Whatever. It shouldn't have been a pick. It should have read it better, and it still might have been an incompletion if he'd thrown it to the right spot. So, is it a concern for me? Yes, that's the short answer. Yes, it is. But it's not something that what concerns me more than the interceptions in camp is that it's a continuation of things that we've seen from Garoppolo, where he he just sometimes misses that underneath coverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a
Those
good question.
linebackers, man, those linebackers get the best of Jimmy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like he doesn't see. I don't know. He's just not seeing it all the way.
Yeah.
So let me get off of that one. You want to jump onto the next topic real
Yeah,
quick?
let's do it. Yeah,
All right. So that's enough of Trey Lance. Kind of, not really.
kind of.
So what does Trey Lance have to do for 49er fans to be happy? And this comes from a question that you had tweeted out yesterday. So I'll kind of let you run with this in a minute.
Yeah, I basically, I looked at it and I said, okay, well, if Trey Lance can be Ryan Tannehill from a throwing perspective, right? Strong arm, big bodied guy. He'd be a little bit more physically imposing. They're both 6'4", but Lance already outweighs him, and I would assume it'd continue to grow a little bit. And but he's more mobile. Like, would people be okay with that? And I think when people look at Tannehill, like they look at maybe the 15th best quarterback in the league, but when I look at Tannehill, I see anywhere from 10 to 12, depending. And if I add some athleticism, a little bit of size, a little bit of speed, allow him to run the read option, well, I'm looking at a perennial top 10 quarterback in this league, 8 to 10, depending on the year and who's there and whatnot. And would that be good enough? Would 49er fans be happy with that? And the consensus I got from that was no, they would not be okay with a top 10, top 8 to 10 quarterback. That, a lot of, hey, we want the guy, not a guy. And, Tannehill took way too long to develop. And if Trey takes that long, then we're never going to win a ring, that type of stuff. So it was just, I guess, not surprising to me, but kind of sobering to me that, like, in 3 years, if Lance turns out to be as good as I think he can be, there's not going to be an issue. But if he falls just short of that and is still a top 10 quarterback, people might want to try to run him out of town, and it's just crazy. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like, for you, when you look at Lance and giving up that much capital, what does Lance have to show you? Does he have to be a top 5 guy, a top 8, top 10, just win a ring? Like, what does that look like for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Now, when I first saw your question, I wanted to disagree with you and tell you no,
Yeah.
because I wanted to argue.
Yeah.
But I mean, no, that using Tannehill's if he can be Ryan Tannehill, I think 49er fans will be happy if he's Ryan Tannehill plus all the stuff that he does with his legs.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tannehill, even in Miami, I think was a better quarterback than people gave him credit for.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to take Trey Lance as long as it took Tannehill to get even to that. I think he's not that far away. It's just going to take him some time. But I think if Trey Lance can turn into a top, Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback that if he was playing on the 49ers, they're probably better because the defense is so good and they've got a good running game. Obviously,
Right.
He has a good running game in Tennessee too, but he has a better defense, I think, out here. And he has better. He has really good playmakers. He'd have really good playmakers on the 49ers that do things with the ball in their hands. We'll see how Tannehill does this year, right? Because he's got two great wide receivers on his team now. So I think 49er fans would be happy with that. I think I'd be happy if he was a top 10 quarterback, especially when you consider who they've had for the last, since 2012. Really?
Right.
2013. I mean, Kaepernick was okay in 2013. It was after 13 when he fell apart. So, yeah, I think Ryan Tannehill's a good comp for him. Or expectation.
Yeah, I just I just wanted to get a pulse on it, and I think it really also comes down to how well Mac Jones plays and how well Fields plays, because if they're both as good as him or slightly better, people are going to go, oh, we could have just waited at 12 and got him, or moved up a spot and got, hindsight's always 2020. And so I think a lot of it's going to have to do with that as well. We'll see. Ultimately winning a ring, I think, solves all the issues. But if we're 3 years down the line and there's no ring and he's as good as Fields, like, that's not going to be good enough for people. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Trey Lance is better than Justin Fields.
I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you.
People are watching Justin Fields in these preseason games, and they're trying to say that Trey Lance he's better than Trey Lance. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Trey Lance can roll out to his right and hit a tight end who doesn't have anybody within 15 yards of him too.
Yep.
It's uh, Kyle Shanahan's not trying to make it easy on him right now. He'll try to make it easy on him in a regular season game, but he's trying to develop this guy, so he's putting him in purposely making it, doing the things that he's going to struggle with the most in these games, and so don't get freaked out by the fact that he might not be, doing all the hurrah things. I mean, heck, Justin Fields didn't even complete 50% of his passes last week, right?
Yeah. And he looked fine. I mean, Fields, to me, like, I don't know about you, but when I look at Fields, out of all these quarterbacks, the only one that has surprised me has been Zach Wilson so far, right? And it's still so early. I mean, we're talking preseason
Well, yeah.
year one. Who knows? But just from the limited film that we've seen of everybody, I would say two players have surprised me. Wilson for how good he's been, and Trevor Lawrence for not a lack of arm strength. His arm's plenty fine, but he can make all the throws the way that Jared Goff makes all the throws. And I thought it would be more like the way Matt Stafford can make all the throws, right? Like his arm to me isn't as strong as what I thought it would be. And so those are the two surprises, but Lance is exactly what I thought he was. Mac Jones is exactly what I thought he could be. Trey's been pretty much what I expected. So I'm not going to change my stance now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Mac Jones looked damn good as far as I'm concerned, but we'll leave that for another day
He
because I
has,
don't want.
but he's had a lot of time in the pocket, right? Like
No,
if
he
he's
does.
sitting back there making peanut butter jelly sandwiches, I mean, Cam looked pretty good last week against Philly too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah. You're playing against Philadelphia; they're not very
right,
good, and he's playing whatever, But he's looked like he's done the same thing with the that he did in Alabama, and he's doing it in the NFL, which is why. But let's not talk about him because everybody's going to hang up on us if we start talking about Mac Jones. But yeah, no. The only here's my concern with Trey Lance. Do I want him to start? Do I think he's going to get better by starting? Yeah, I think he's going to. The more he plays, the better he's going to get. He needs reps. But my concern with him and the reason I pause is because he hasn't really played well when he's gotten a chance with the starters. He hasn't gotten a whole lot, but when he's gotten in with the starters in the games, he hasn't excelled. I know it was only for a series and one play against the Chiefs, right? But if he goes out there and if he goes out there against the Chiefs and he rips that first pass like it's supposed to be, right? And then he comes back on the other throw and he's got the blitz and he hits that guy. Those are the things that you want to see him be able to do to say you feel comfortable with him, because all of his big stuff has come when he's been playing against the backups with the backups, and he's had some other, he's got some pretty talented backup wide receivers that he's throwing to also with a lot of NFL experience. But that's the only thing for me. That's my only pause for concern with Lance as far as him being the starter right now. I do think he has a little bit of room still to grow. He's going to get, but at the same time, that's hard to say because you can see when he just needs to play. The more he plays, the better he's going to get.
Yep, absolutely.
If you're going to do that move, you've got to. Two things have to happen. Shanahan needs to make the move knowing that he's going to stick with him no matter what. And everybody needs to realize that there's going to be some ups and there's going to be some downs. And when there's downs, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I agree.
So there's a good question over here by Sean Hurley. He asks, how much of an injury risk does Trey Lance have, given his running ability and the bad offensive line? Props to Jessie for predicting Lance getting drafted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about it at all. I think this is what's interesting about 49er fans, right? And I understand it. Jimmy's been so injury prone, unlucky, whatever you want to call it. He hasn't played near as many games as he should, no matter how you want to slice the pie. And with that, people are freaked out. Like the backup quarterback position is so important. Oh my gosh, if we don't have a backup, what's going to happen? What if Trey gets injured? And I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Mr. Hurley, but that seems to be the pulse from 49er fans. And I'm not too worried about it. I mean, we're talking about a strong, young kid who's athletic, knows how to protect himself. And you look at the hit he took on that throw to River Craycraft in that first game.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, he was folded in half,
Yeah.
and he hits the ground. And as he hits the ground, he immediately pops his head up to see if he completed the pass. I'm not too concerned about Lance at all. Now, does that mean he can't get injured? No, absolutely not. But is it ever a concern of mine? No, it's not.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, and this was a question that was actually asked to Mike McDaniel's today during his time when he met with the press.
Mm,
One of them asked, the question I think was that they asked was, does Trey Lance know how to slide?
yeah,
And then and he said, well, I think he does. And he got into either slide or they dive, whatever the
yeah,
quarterbacks like to do. Whatever they're doing to protect themselves. But uh, really, what he was saying was that hey, it's football. You got to know how to protect yourself,
hmm,
regardless of whether you're
hmm,
sliding, you're whatever position you are. If you're an offensive lineman, you've got to you know understand that they're probably going to try to chop you because you're all off balance. If you're running back or a wide receiver, you just need to know how to protect yourself and get down or fall the right way, right? And that's really, I think, goes back to what this question is. I don't think Trey Lance is anymore. I don't have a question with it as far as an injury risk. He's a big, strong kid. As long as he's running towards the sideline and a defensive back comes to hit him, instead of planting his foot in the ground to try to run into him, if he just steps out of bounds, he's going to be okay.
yeah,
That's taking a shot at Jimmy there, but that's it, right? Just be smart about what you're doing. If
yeah,
you're running along the sidelines and you're not going to get a first down because it's 3rd and 20, just step out of bounds and live to play the next down. Uh, there's going to be times when he's going to be running up the middle. He's going to get hit. The 49ers are going to use him in the running game. I mean, I don't think that's giving away any secrets that this guy's going to be running the ball at times. Uh, he's going to take hits, but he's taken hits in college. These hits are going to be harder. He just got to be smarter about making sure that he's running to the right guys. If it's a big old linebacker coming at you, you might want to hit the ground. If it's a line, a cornerback or something like that, truck that little guy.
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny though because we had the same question. Bay Area Baller asked the question to Sean McAvoy last week, who is Trey Lance's QB coach and personal QB coach, and he asked him, "Does he know how to slide?" And he's like, "I don't know." And Scangarello's like, "I don't know." So it is. It's one of those things that we think about as fans, right? We've never seen it. Does he know how to do it? And it is a little bit of a worry for us. But
Mm-hmm.
clearly, people who spend time actually teaching the quarterback position, they're not worried about it. They're not practicing it. They're not teaching it. It just kind of is what it is. They expect that he knows how to protect himself, however that is, whether that's getting out of bounds, diving, sliding, or laying the lumber yourself, whatever that looks like. Hey, you figure that out. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think part of the reason that question had come up today, and then Sean asks it now, is I don't think we've seen Trey Lance slide. I don't recall him sliding at any of the
nope.
practices that I've been at, and I don't think he's slid in any of the games yet because the scramble that he had in the game, he ran out of bounds. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I've seen from him in camp. He scrambles and he gets towards the sidelines and then he just steps out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've seen of him so far when he's been in a scramble mode. So yeah,
And even
I
on the
don't.
2 point conversion, he stiff armed the guy, right? Like he didn't try to avoid the hit. He just pushed him out of the way. So
Yeah, he stiff armed him so he could get across the line of scrimmage
yeah,
because he was right there. So
right.
yeah, he again, that was one where he took off running to the sideline. He was sprinting to the cone, right? Sprinting to the
Mm-hmm.
pylon. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a really good question, Sean. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Uh, Go ahead. I thought you were
No,
gonna say
no,
something.
that's it. I was just agreeing. It was a very good question, and it's one that comes up quite a bit. It seems like.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then I know. Typically we go a little bit longer, but it's about 7:15 right now.
Yeah,
I got to go pick up my son and get him from football,
totally fair.
and
Totally fair.
I got to get him from football. And then my other one's got his first high school game tomorrow for his varsity season. So
I think we
looking.
gave a good 40 minutes and we talked about what's on everybody's mind. And, soon the topic of conversation is going to sway away from Lance, if he's not the starter or not getting a lot of burn. And we'll see how this whole thing plays out. But let me throw one last thing at you because
Mhm.
it kind of hit me last night as I was on with Grant. And I'm kind of sticking with it and we'll see. So, you keep hearing about how there's going to be this dual quarterback thing, right?
Hmm.
And everybody kind of took that story and they even talked about it again today. And I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I thought maybe here's a conspiracy. What if what if they're acting as if there's going to be a two quarterback system once it comes to the season, only so that everybody, because they said that they're going to play the starters for a quarter and a half or a full half this coming Sunday, only if, so that when they do both play with the starters and they're actually evaluating who they want to be the starter, nobody freaks out or makes a story of it because everybody's expecting a dual quarterback play style this coming year. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a that's a good one when you consider kind of what they've done the last couple of days, where they've really been rotating these guys through. Right,
Yeah.
it's the they're saying that it's because they want to get them ready for the game. But yeah, that's definitely a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
That
Who
that
knows?
I
I mean, it seems to me like if you're really listening to everything, that it seems like, hey, this is, Jimmy's job, and they are legitimately going to do this two quarterback thing, which I think is I don't know why. But then my thought is like, well, hold on. I really feel like last week they wanted to give the job to Lance and he didn't take it. And it's also why Jimmy didn't come back in the game, and they used because it was supposed to be Jimmy for a series, Trey for two, and then Jimmy again. And I figured, okay, well, Lance didn't show enough, and so they didn't want to do that. And then they used the excuse of Jimmy had played 16 plays or whatever. But reality was Trey didn't take the job the way that they had expected, or at least put enough pressure on Jimmy. And so they want to use it for one more week, and let's see if, hey, we give him one more chance, can he take this job? So we're going to do this rotating thing. We're going to act as if this is what we want to do this season, but really we want one more full week to evaluate this thing and make it a final decision on it. So I
yeah.
don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from on that. It's not necessarily. I don't think that's completely out in left field as a theory of what's happening. Uh, I'm not a big fan of this two quarterback system myself. I don't know of anyone who's of a team that's ever done it throughout the entire season that's been successful. I know teams have done it here and there. I asked that question on Twitter a while ago, and people mentioned the 2012 49ers, but they only did that for a short period of time, and then they kind of got away from it after like the first 6 weeks of the season, and then uh, Smith played all of the game against Arizona. He was going to play all of the game against the Rams, I believe, until he got knocked out. They kind of got away from it because I think that Harbaugh realized it was causing problems. So I don't think it's. I think they're going to do it some, but I think this is going to play itself out probably over the first half of the season.
Yeah. At the end of the day, two takeaways I have, and I know you got to go, is one, regardless of what happens, I know people want to think there was no quarterback competition. There 100% was. And the way that that is by the fact of if they do enter the season with playing two quarterbacks, even if Jimmy's the guy, if Trey Lance was the starter, they're not playing two quarterbacks. The reason that they're playing two quarterbacks is because they had hoped that Lance would be the starter. He didn't do enough to steal that job, and so they're going to continue to acclimate him until he is the starter. It wouldn't go the other way around. So, that's the way that I see it. But I know that you got to get going. And
Well, I know I got to go on, but now you got me wanting to say one more thing
okay, go ahead.
because you had made a good point in terms of that bringing up kind of what happened against the Chargers, because they said they were going to play Garoppolo, pull him, and then take him out for a couple series. I think what happened there was he just played so long that series that did take a long time. Then there was a long period between him coming off the field and then Lance playing his two series before Garoppolo would have got back out there. And I just think maybe a couple of things. One, I think that he had been off the field too long. They didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
worry about him having to reheat up and get back out there. And the second one was I think that Shanahan was bound and determined he was going to make sure that Trey Lance had some success before he pulled him off the field.
For sure. For sure. And that's fair.
Yeah, yeah, and that the Lance, as bad as Lance struggled in that game, him performing the way he did uh, in that 57 seconds when they got the ball, I know it only took 45 or whatever it was to score the touchdown, but in that's a situation that we need to see more of him in. That's the stuff that he needs to do. That's where that I think that's the biggest concern from the coaches, the coaching staff, is that he hasn't really been in that situation. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's just do this one, last one, and we're gonna go. We're gonna make it two. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this question in 2 minutes. Sean asks, Grant believes the Niners don't have a chance to make it to Super Bowl with Jimmy on the team because of salary. What's your take? Sorry for late chat.
Go
That's
ahead.
okay. You're good. What's my take? I'll give you my take is I don't. And I've said this quite a bit. I don't think the 49ers are going to make the Super Bowl this year. I don't think. I think they're going to have a really good season. I just think that they're going to fall short of that game uh, because you've got a whole lot of things. You've got the salary for Garoppolo. You've got the rookie quarterback. You've got the fact that Garoppolo isn't going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, and there's only one quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl that's ever lost in his first start and come back and made it back to the Super Bowl. There's only one quarterback that's done that that's not in the Hall of Fame. That's Craig Morton. The other ones that have all done it are in the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's a person that's listening to us that ever listened to us that thinks Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a Hall of Famer.
No.
Uh, so
Yeah,
that's
I don't think it's because he makes too much money, although it's never happened. I don't think it's because Lance is a rookie. I don't think the 49ers are ready to win a Super Bowl this year. And that's okay. I think that they're definitely a playoff team, but no matter how you look at it, whether Lance starts or Jimmy starts at this point in Lance's career, they still have the fourth best quarterback in the division, right? So that's a thing. And that's the other reason why I think Lance should start from day one, because Jimmy's not going to push you over the top and win you a ring. So why are you going to take 1 year or 8 games or whatever it ends up being away from Lance developing when year two is really when he's going to hit a stride? And let's say Garoppolo doesn't come out all year. He's the starter all year. That puts Lance back a full another year, which means you wasted a year. You weren't going to win a Super Bowl anyways. And Lance now only has 3 years left on this inexpensive contract where you can pay everybody around him. And he's not really going to hit a stride now until year 3 because he hasn't seen live bullets enough. It just, I don't know. Every way that I look at it, I just don't see a reason why Lance shouldn't be starting. If somebody can sell me on it, my Twitter handle's below. I know Jack's got to go, by all means, but I cannot find the reason for it. So
yeah, no, it's a tough one. I'd like to try to sell you on it, but as much as I'm okay with Garoppolo starting, I'm equally okay with Trey Lance starting because I understand the upside with Lance. I know that there's going to be some struggles early on, like I've said a couple of times,
yep,
but he's going to get better as the season goes on. I think,
right,
and I said this a couple of shows ago. He's been Roethlisberger if they let him play. I think in terms of the success,
yep,
you know,
I agree.
let him hand the ball off a bunch and throw here. You know, if you keep him to about 20, 25 throws a game, hand the ball off, I think he's going to be okay.
Yep,
So
I agree.
that's my take. But no, thank you again, Sean, for the question. That was a good one. You had a couple of really good ones. So that's one of the fun parts when Jessie and I do these shows is we have all of our topics, but today we only got to 2 of them because we had 3 really good questions that got us talking about other stuff, and I talk way too much sometimes when we get doing this stuff.
Me too.
But yeah, no, I really appreciate we really appreciate everybody coming on and joining us tonight for the show. Thank you to those of you, Sean and Keneal, for
Keneal.
the super chats and everybody else that participated tonight. We'll definitely be back next Thursday with some topics, even though we have a bye week next week before the season opener. We'll be back then, and Jessie probably has a show to jump on right now at 7:30. Is that right?
Yeah, 8 minutes. Come over to Last Second Sports. Mainly fantasy football talk tonight, but we will talk a little bit of what's going around in the NFL. So yeah, tap in.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.